watch. Hello. I'm sure you've done that before. You can make quite a good loud sound with a squash straw, but it's not much of a tune, is it?
Hello. Here's a better way of making a sound. We've been experimenting with different types of pipes, seeing what sort of sounds they make. You have to remember to cover over the other end, either with your hand, or you could cover it with a bit of plasticine, like that.
This one makes a lovely sound.
You can make a musical instrument by putting together all sorts of different lengths of pipes. Rather like that. That one on the end. Each different length of pipe makes a different note.
Instead of using different lengths of pipe, you can use an instrument like this. It's called a flute. And I'm making the different notes by covering the different holes with my fingers. We have a story about three musicians called Bindu, Badu, and Bidu. And one of those musicians played a flute just like this.
Bindu played the flute. Badu played the whistle. And Bidu played the drum. They travelled about from one end of India to the other, playing in all the towns and villages they came to. One day, they came to a village with a wonderful palace just outside it. They sat down in the village square. All the people gathered around them, and they played. The palace belonged to the richest Raja in all India, and that day he was giving a great feast for 100 guests. The music of the travelling musicians could be heard from the palace, so the Raja sent out his servant to command the three musicians to come to play for him. Bindu, Badu, and Bidu were taken into the Raja's magnificent dining room. As they entered, their eyes were blinded by 1,000 flashing lights. The walls of the room were made of silver and gold, and the chandeliers that hung from the ceiling were made of rubies, sapphires, and diamonds. The guests were dressed in silks and satins, with cloaks of thin woven gold thread, and on every part of their clothes were sewn thousands of precious jewels which flashed in the light. The Rajah was the most magnificent of all. His turban was covered in diamonds the size of eggs. His fingers were so smothered with rings he could hardly lift his hands, and the plates he was eating from were of solid gold. Once their eyes had got used to this incredible sight, Bindu, Badu, and Bidu began to play. They played their beautiful music for hours, and the Rajah and his guests talked and drank and ate and ate and ate. At last, the guests were full and the feast was ending. Bindu, Badu, and Bidu asked the servant of the Rajah to pay them so that they too could buy something to eat. But the servant glared at them and began to fall about, laughing. "But didn't you know," he said finally, "the Rajah never pays anybody for anything. Well, that's why he's the richest man in all of India. Be off with you, and be grateful that you've set eyes upon the Rajah. That is payment enough for the likes of you." Bindu, Badu, and Bidu were very angry. They began to play their music again, but this time in a slow, strange way. The servant stared at them, hypnotized, and fell asleep. The three musicians kept playing until the Rajah and each one of his 100 guests was fast asleep. Then Bindu, Badu, and Bidu walked quietly through the palace gate and along the road out of the village. When they had gone a little way, they stopped and looked back. Bindu took up the flute, Badu took up the whistle, and Bidu took up the drum, and again they played, slowly and strangely. As they played, the bushes growing outside the palace grew into great trees, and the creepers covering the walls began to grow larger and larger until finally the whole palace was enclosed in a thick forest. Then Bindu stopped playing the flute, Badu stopped playing the whistle, and Bidu stopped playing the drum, and they walked away, never to be seen again. Nowadays, it is said, if you stand in that place and the wind is blowing from the direction of the palace, you can sometimes hear the strange song of the three traveling musicians floating over the trees.
We have another three musicians here, but I don't think they're going to cast any magic spells on us. They are Tracy, Debbie, and Elaine, and they each play an instrument from the woodwind family: the flute, the oboe, and the clarinet. Two of these instruments, the flute and the oboe, are like the woodwind ones that Bindu and Badu played in the story. As they're woodwind instruments, they're played by blowing into them, but they make their sounds in very different ways. Watch how Tracy plays the flute. She makes the sound by blowing across the hole, rather like I was doing with those pipes. Can we see that again? In the story, the flute had little holes all the way along the top of it. Tracy, your flute doesn't have little holes all the way along the top. It has little covers and levers and things. Why is that?
Well, my hands are too small to reach the bottom hole, so I have to have something to cover them for me.
Oh, I see. Could you play something else for us? I know that tune. It's from Peter and the Wolf. And the flute plays the bird in Peter and the Wolf. And it does sound just like a bird, doesn't it?
That's lovely. The oboe makes its sound in a very different way. Debbie, can you show us how you make the sound of the oboe?
I blow through the reed, which is made from a tube of bamboo, which is cut down and then put on there so they vibrate against each other.
Oh, I see. That looks a bit like my squash straw, doesn't it? I suppose it works in much the same way, really. What, if you blew just through the reed on its own without being attached to the oboe, how would it sound? Do that for us. A bit like a duck quacking, isn't it? And maybe that's the reason that the oboe plays the part of the duck in Peter and the Wolf. There's another character in the story of Peter and the Wolf whose tune is played on a woodwind instrument. It's Peter's cat. The cat's tune is played on the clarinet. The clarinet has a reed too, but it looks different from the oboe's reed. Elaine, can you show us? Ah, thank you. It's quite flat at the bottom, much flatter than the oboe reed, and it's all in one piece, as opposed to being separated. I see. Can you play something else? Do you know, I know some words to go with that tune. The clarinet, of all the woodwind we most notes can get. A single reed is all we need to make our smooth and mellow sound. Do you know, that gives me an idea. The violins of all the strings, we take the lead and have the most to do. We gaily play the melody and sing away the whole piece through. The violins of all the strings, we take the lead and have the most to do. We gaily play the melody and sing away the whole piece through.
There's another woodwind instrument that we haven't seen yet, and it's my favourite. The instrument that Paul is playing is called the bassoon, and the tune is the last of the woodwind parts from Peter and the Wolf. That rumbling, deep sound that the bassoon makes is just like a grumpy old grandfather, isn't it? Before we go, let's hear Paul play the part the bassoon plays of the grumpy old grandfather once more. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.